Monaco is one of only two sovereign states in Europe which doesn't have a FIFA and UEFA affiliated national team. The other one, the Vatican City, is relatively easy to understand. According to the UN, the population of the Vatican City recently dipped below 500, and the fact that the Swiss Guards are just about the Holy See's only citizens capable of playing competitive football reduces the pool of potential Vatican City national team players down to about 135. It would take a miracle to turn a player pool of that size into anything that even remotely resembled a competitive national team, although, I suppose, if any national team were capable of pulling off a miracle, just saying. Monaco, by contrast, though still very small, is home to almost 40,000 people, making it larger than either Gibraltar or San Marino, both of which have FIFA and UEFA affiliated national teams, and not that much smaller than either Liechtenstein or the Faroe Islands. I know we're not exactly talking about powerhouses of the international game, but the Faroe Islands recently beat both Lithuania and Turkey in the UEFA Nations League, rising to 138th in the FIFA World Rankings, above both Pakistan and the Philippines, the 5th and 12th largest countries in the world by population, home to a combined 350 million people. And even San Marino, who are often, wrongly, described as being the worst national team in the world, scored goals and only lost 2-1 against both Denmark and Finland in Euro 2024 qualifying, which is a mark of just how much more competitive and resilient even the smallest nations have become. What's more, Monaco is home to a far more impressive football team and stadium than any of those countries. Heck, the Stade Louis II is a UEFA Category 4 stadium which was the sole host of the UEFA Super Cup for 14 years, has a capacity of more than 16,000, making it larger than Slovenia's home ground, who qualified for Euro 2024, reached the knockout stage, and only lost on penalties against Portugal, and indeed, most national football teams' home stadiums for that matter. Meanwhile, AS Monaco, who compete in the French league system, are the 5th most successful club in the history of French football, and regulars in the UEFA Champions League, a competition in which they were finalists in 2004, following victories against Chelsea and Real Madrid. Once again, there are very few nations that can boast a team of such pedigree and prestige. Belgium, who are ranked 6th in the FIFA World Rankings, haven't had a Champions League or European Cup finalist since all the way back in 1978, and Croatia, who are ranked 12th, have literally never had one. So if Monaco were to apply for FIFA and UEFA membership as a sovereign state with an FA and a superb stadium, they would be virtually guaranteed to be accepted. It all begs the question, why don't Monaco have a national football team? Well, if that's something that you've ever wondered before, and if I know my subscribers, then I'm pretty sure it is, and if it wasn't already, then you are now, you're not quite going to believe your luck, because that's what today's video is all about. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to the French Riviera, and specifically to the semi-enclave of Monaco, a country which has no income or capital gains tax, no airports, no universities, no prisons, no agricultural land, and, most importantly of all, of course, no national football team, as we take a look at why Monaco is essentially the only sovereign state in the world which, despite being virtually guaranteed to be accepted, hasn't created either a FIFA or UEFA affiliated national football team. Monaco isn't only unusual in terms of not having a national football team. It is a global outlier by several significant metrics. Monaco has the world's highest nominal GDP per capita, by far, at over 3 times that of the United States and 5 times the United Kingdom, the world's highest GDP at PPP per capita, GNI per capita, the most millionaires and billionaires per capita, and the world's most expensive real estate market. This is all made possible because of 3 key factors. 1. Monaco is very small. It is the 2nd smallest sovereign state in the world behind the Vatican. I once walked the entire length of it in less than an hour, and it took me a while to realise that I was no longer in Monaco and had in fact wandered back into France. 2, it is a tax haven, open only to those who are wealthy enough to buy property there and selfish enough not to want to contribute to the societies that they came from and that made them. And 3, its climate, geography, and coastline make it almost uniquely attractive among tax havens. Whereas most tax havens are centered around the Caribbean and the Gulf states in West Asia, Monaco is bordered by France to the northeast and west, on the Mediterranean Sea in Western Europe, just 5 miles from the French border with Italy. Nice Côte d'Azur Airport, which is connected to Monaco by railroad and regular helicopter flights, is the 3rd busiest airport in France, and is a 2-hour or less flight from most major European cities like London, Paris, Milan, Madrid, Barcelona, Berlin, and Rome. What all of that means, however, is that Monaco has very unusual demographics. For a start, of Monaco's 38,682 residents at the last count, fewer than 10,000 of them are actually Monegasque nationals, with 75% of the population just very rich people who've moved there primarily for tax purposes. Consequently, Monaco is very old. How old, you ask? Well, it is by far the oldest country in the world, with a median age of 56.2, which is pretty extraordinary when you think that in the second oldest, Japan, where the median age is 49.5, the adult nappy market, that is diapers for any American viewers, now brings in twice as much revenue as nappies designed for babies. That is how old the Japanese population, which is at the forefront of a global demographic aging crisis, is, yet Monaco is as much older than Japan as Japan is older than the entire EU average. Even more so, in fact. Just 12% of Monaco's population is under the age of 14, and while the annual birth rate, which hovers around 800 to 1,000, is higher than some similarly small countries, being born in Monaco doesn't guarantee you any form of citizenship or residency, and nor does marrying an existing resident of Monaco. They are pretty strict about citizenship and residency in Monaco, as you might imagine. Monaco doesn't allow for dual citizenship, so to become a citizen you must renounce any other existing citizenships, and the requirement for residency is principally a proof of funds, which requires a minimum deposit of 500,000 euros into a Monegasque bank account, and then, the biggest hurdle, being able to buy or rent an apartment, when the apartments start at about 4 million euros, and the most expensive are literally the most expensive apartments anywhere in the world, with one penthouse having sold for $440 million in 2016. What's more, the children of the super rich, who are, invariably therefore, super rich themselves, or very soon will be, are effectively residents and citizens of nowhere. Not to stereotype, I would hate to paint with too broad a brush and upset any billionaires, who have a tough enough time as it is if you ask me. Most of them spend about half of their time on yachts and private jets, and are in a different continent and time zone every day of the week. The super rich also don't tend to become professional footballers, not because they're more interested in rugby, cricket, golf, skiing, Formula 1, polo, and that weird one at the Olympics that only royals compete in, where they make horses try and dance. Many of them are actually football fans these days, but because becoming a professional footballer, well, it's really hard. You have to train hard, carefully manage your diet, and often sacrifice events and personal relationships. It's an awful lot of hard work when you could make more money off the dividends of your mum or dad's firm or property portfolio than you ever would playing for even Manchester United. I digress, somewhat. The point being here, Monaco may have a similar population to Gibraltar, San Marino, Liechtenstein and the Faroe Islands, but the makeup of that population is very different, resulting in a far, far smaller pool of potential players. Just as a bit of fun though, I thought I'd try to figure out which footballers would actually be eligible to represent Monaco, and what a prospective Monaco national team could actually look like. In goal, I am going with 19-year-old Matteo Minguzzi, who was born in Monaco and plays for Monaco's under-21s, but also has Italian citizenship. At right back, it's another teenager, Muslim Yusuf, an 18-year-old who is part of Nice's under-19 setup, can play at either left or right back, and is a citizen of both France and Comoros. At centre-back, we've got Lorenzo Priscio, the son of Monaco legend Dado Priscio, who was born in Monaco for that exact reason, and now plays for RUTB in the third tier of Belgian football. alongside the undoubted star of this team, Olivier Boscagli, who is a former French youth team international and a regular for Dutch giants PSV now, and at left back, who else but Francesco Renzetti, a 36-year-old who once played in Serie A and for Italy's under-21s, but now plays in the 5th tier of Italian football. Hey, I know what you're thinking, but that back five is genuinely of a higher calibre than some UEFA-affiliated national team's defences. In midfield, Tom Haitley, the son of another former Monaco star Mark Haitley, who just left Polish outfit PS Gliwice, aged 35, with whom he won an Ekstraklasa title in 2019, partners Jordan Gomez, a 20-year-old Monaco native of Portuguese descent who came through the youth ranks at Monaco and is described by their club website as a tireless midfielder, but now plays non-league football in France for FC Beausoleil on the border with Monaco. And last but not least, our What If Monaco front four consists of Gianmarco Gabrielli, Daniele Impozzani, Matteo Brizzolara, and Mael Kesson, none of whom, if I am being honest with you, are very good. I mean, Brizzolara is a fullback who I've had to shoehorn onto the wing, and Kesson is literally a centre-back who currently plays for the Kansas City Roos in the United States, who I plan to deploy as a target man, so it would be fair to say that Monaco aren't exactly blessed with options in attacking areas. As you would imagine then, Monaco would be minnows on the international stage, highly unlikely to ever qualify for a major tournament, and routinely on the end of defeats, and often heavy defeats, just like other similarly sized UEFA nations. But whereas for other countries, their national football team represents a kind of national pride, an identity and unifying force to rally behind, that emotional attachment doesn't really exist in the same sense in Monaco, where non-citizens, who move there solely because it saved them X amount on their tax bill, outnumber citizens by a ratio of 3 to 1, almost all of whom would leave in an instant if Monaco began imposing regular tax rates like other countries. And when I say they would almost all leave, I really do mean about 99%. As a place, forgetting everything else, Monaco is very unimpressive. I've been twice, once by accident, I wouldn't have gone back there on purpose, and outside of a pretty opera house and an amazing car museum it must be said, it is deeply underwhelming. It's much worse than Hull. I'm not joking, by the way, it's just full of ugly high-rises that sell for millions or tens of millions of euros, which people pretend to live in to avoid paying tax, while actually living in $10 million mansions in nearby French seaside communes like Eze, not the Crystal Palace player, that's Eze, which is stunning and worth visiting. There are also loads of creepy photos of the royal family everywhere you go, because it is a legal requirement for all Monegasque businesses, a bit like in North Korea, which range from the cringy to the deeply unsettling, especially given the nature of the royals that are often being lauded. Monaco's royals ostensibly declared a state of neutrality during World War II, but in actual fact, their flexible regulations and tax laws allowed the Nazis to trade with the rest of the world through holding companies that they established in Monaco. The foreign currencies the Nazis obtained via their operations in Monaco were vital to the German war effort, and in 1943, Prince Louis II, yes, that is the same Prince Louis II that Monaco Stadium is named in honour of, welcomed the Nazis into Monaco as an occupying force in exchange for the preservation of his status and Monaco's monarchy. During this time, under Prince Louis II, roughly 90 Monegasque Jews were rounded up by Monegasque police and deported to Auschwitz. Only 9 survived. The deportees included René Blum, who founded Monaco's famous opera house and was murdered in Auschwitz. It was only in 2015, 73 years later, that Monaco finally publicly apologised for their role in the Holocaust, and Prince Albert II, who has reigned since 2005, acknowledged Prince Louis II's failure to maintain neutrality during World War II, and tacit, if not outright support for the Nazis. Their only football stadium, and one of Monaco's most important buildings and landmarks, is still named after him though, along with the Louis II Tunnel, made famous by Monaco's Formula 1 Grand Prix, the Avenue Prince Louis II, the Louis II Building, the Prince Louis II Foundation, and a marble bust of him. All very normal stuff, nothing strange about any of that. I digress, again, the point being, most people don't live in Monaco because they have any attachment to the place itself, but because they hate the idea of any of their vast fortune being used to support hospitals or a welfare state. The idea, therefore, of having a national football team that barely anyone feels any emotional connection to, which gets humped every international break in an empty stadium, named after a Nazi sympathiser, has never been a particularly appealing concept to the powers that be in Monaco. Instead, Monaco has made what is effectively a strategic decision to focus all of their efforts on a professional team, AS Monaco, rather than a national team, which allows Monaco to draw players, like they draw a population, from all over Europe and the rest of the world, and to get all of the glamour and prestige that comes with competing at the top end of a Big Five league and in UEFA competitions, which suits Monaco's national identity, insofar as one even exists, far more so than having a very unglamorous national team like Gibraltar or San Marino. Whereas a Monaco national team would most likely get spanked by Northern Ireland and Kazakhstan, AS Monaco can, and indeed have, gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Manchester City, PSG and Real Madrid. Neither Gibraltar nor San Marino, nor many far bigger and more competitive nations for that matter, have club teams that even come close to the calibre and status of AS Monaco. There is also an important technical point to be made here. Because Monaco aren't FIFA or UEFA members, and AS Monaco have been members of the French Football Federation since first being invited to turn professional all the way back in 1933, when it comes to UEFA competitions, AS Monaco are considered as being as French as PSG or Marseille. If the Monegasque Football Federation were to become UEFA affiliated, AS Monaco could continue to compete in the French Football League system, but UEFA would almost certainly reassign them as being representatives of the Monegasque Football Federation rather than the French Football Federation. That might seem like a mere technicality, but in actual fact, it would mean that AS Monaco would no longer be able to qualify for UEFA competitions via their performance in either Ligue 1 or the Coupe de France, even if they were to win both competitions in the same season, and they would lose the access that is afforded to them via France's UEFA coefficient. Effectively, they would become like FC Vaduz. FC Vaduz are the biggest and indeed the only professional football club in Liechtenstein, and they began playing in the neighbouring Swiss Football League system in 1933, the same year, incidentally, that AS Monaco were invited to turn professional by the French Football Federation. But because of the Liechtenstein Football Association having full UEFA membership, Vaduz are considered a guest club in Switzerland who compete in Swiss football competitions but cannot represent Switzerland internationally and instead must represent Liechtenstein. What that means is that even if Vaduz were to win the Swiss Super League title, where the top two teams typically qualify for the UEFA Champions League, they wouldn't qualify for any UEFA competition. Instead, Vaduz's only route into European football is via the Liechtenstein Football Cup, which they still compete in, and have won a record-breaking 50 times, including in every single season barring one since the 1997-98 campaign. Because Liechtenstein has such a low UEFA coefficient ranking though, unlike Switzerland, and only operates a single cup competition rather than a league, with all 7 of their active teams competing as guest clubs in Switzerland, the Liechtenstein Football Cup winners only qualify for the UEFA Conference League rather than the Europa League or the Champions League. FC Vaduz are prohibited, therefore, from qualifying for the Champions League regardless of their success within the Swiss Football League system. If the Monegasque Football Federation were to join UEFA, AS Monaco would likely find themselves in a very similar situation. Unable to qualify for the Champions League, a competition they reached the final of in 2004, and the semis as recently as 2017, even if they were to win the Ligue 1 title, which they have done 8 times, most recently in 2017. That is a headache that AS Monaco, and Monaco as a whole, would really rather avoid, and most likely don't view as being a worthwhile trade-off in exchange for a national team that no one would care about that gets battered on a routine basis. It's important to note that Monaco does actually have a national football team. I know, I am a total fraud giving this video that title, but in name only, due to the fact that they don't have FIFA or UEFA membership, and unlike, for example, Greenland, who I've also made a video about, they've never tried to gain membership, nor are they currently in the process of doing so. Monaco's national team was founded in the same year as the Monegasque Football Federation, 2000, and since then, they have played a grand total of just 25 games. Monaco's national team have only played one game in the last 10 years, a 0-0 draw against the Vatican City in Rome, and none in the last 7 years, so, arguably, given that they are at best dormant, if not outright extinct, I am standing by that title. You might be wondering, or at least I was, what if the next Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo was from Monaco? Would that mean that they just could never play international football, and could certainly never play in a major tournament, like at the Euros or the World Cup? And the answer, theoretically, at least as far as I can tell, is yes, assuming that they didn't hold any other citizenship, and weren't eligible to represent any other national teams. That is rare. Most of the small number of people born and raised in Monaco will meet the FIFA eligibility criteria to represent someone else, most likely either Italy or France, like Olivier Boscagli, who I mentioned earlier on, who was born in Monaco but represented France from under 17 to under 21 level, but it is possible, which, I don't know, seems a bit strange, doesn't it? The same is true for the likes of Palau, Nauru, and Tuvalu, of course, who, if they were to spawn a world-class footballer all of a sudden, who wasn't eligible to represent anyone else, would, for now at least, be denied the opportunity to play competitive international football. Don't get me wrong, it is pretty unlikely, but it's a strange thought experiment nonetheless. I think, although I can't be certain, that I have actually found one such example. Armand Forcherio is one of Monaco's greatest players of all time, a one-club man and club legend who spent 11 years at Monaco, racking up roughly 300 appearances. Forcherio was born in Monaco and is a rare Monegasque citizen, meaning that he isn't, and wasn't, a citizen of any other country. He was a regular for Monaco between 1961 and 1972, a period of time in which they won a Ligue 1 and Coupe de France double, so one could only assume that he was fairly decent, and would have been in contention at the very least to make the France squad, who only qualified for one out of a possible 3 World Cups during his career, and went out in the group stage of the one that they did qualify for, had he have been eligible. So, unlikely, sure, but not impossible. And, again, as far as I can tell, it may already once have happened. If you are watching this, Mr. Forcherio, who is 83 years old now but is still, I hope, going strong, please feel free to confirm if you were eligible to represent anyone else down below in the comments. So, to conclude, Monaco doesn't have a national football team because they don't want one. They meet all of the criteria, but there is very little appetite for a rubbish Monegasque national team that no one would care about, which would likely come at the expense of AS Monaco's qualification to UEFA competitions via the French Football Federation, and for that reason, unlike almost every other sovereign state in the world, with the exception of the Vatican City, who are fighting tooth and nail, every other one that is, not the Vatican, for affiliation with their local confederation and FIFA, Monaco has made no such attempts and is unlikely to anytime soon. That is it for today's video. Hope that you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, it goes without saying, even though I always say it, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, not just for this channel, HITC7s, but also my second channel, Alfie Potsama, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might fancy watching after this one. And you can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads by the username @HITC7s on all three, should you wish to do so. And all of those links, plus a whole lot more, should be down in the video description below. Cheers.